It's time to set out on another adventure with me, the casual competitor, and my dog Obi. Alright, so this is going to be the first box we're opening. I'm going to be doing one of each, hence the title, Battle of the Boxes. This is your standard draft box, as they call it now. The OG 36 packs of 15 cards that you would use during a draft, or basically the original product that Wizards came out with. The expert level, as they used to call it. Some fun things that they've done with these boxes recently, obviously, I'm certain most of you have heard about, is the box toppers. We're actually not going to go and do the box topper right away. I'm going to set that off to the side here for right now. Then we're going to crack about half these packs. I'm going to go middle row first. And then once we get through half the packs, I'm going to open that box topper. You know, see if we get anything juicy before getting to the box topper. Just set those off to the side here. First pack. I'm a fan of the Japanese style of packing boxes where they have the rare right at the front. These new tokens are pretty awesome. They're for your flip cards. They're pretty nice. We obviously have a full art land. Right off the rip, we get a flip card. We get the Ondu Sky Ruins and the Ondu Inversion. Some pretty nice uncommons here. I love this card. One of the best landfall cards to be printed. And then, to sort out our uncommons here. Can never remember my order, so give me a second. Yeah. A lot of white in the pack. That's something I've noticed. I've opened a couple boxes already. Some of these packs are very heavily weighted. They're not exactly color balanced as much as they used to be. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. We got a second one of those. Oh, right off the rip. We got an Ahiri, which is really nice. The Planeswalkers, they've upped the number of mythics in this set. So there's about 20, I think. And that makes for a very interesting situation because there's more mythics, which means that there's less of a chance of actually pulling these planeswalkers because there's still only 3 planeswalkers. That makes it a lot cooler when you open them. I feel like it gives that more punch that we used to get from planeswalkers. If I notice any of these uncommons, by the way, that really pique my interest, like this Skyclave Pickaxe is probably one of my favorite cards in the set. Landfall is definitely a good mechanic. Let me see here. Pack 3. We got a copy token. We got an island. Whoops. Wrong pile. Swarm Shambler. Let's see here. We got 2 red uncommons out of this pack. Like I said, a little bit unbalanced. We're still hunting for a black uncommon. That was actually one of the first issues we had with the first box we had. It took a very long time to find some black uncommons. They're just not very, very common, I guess would be the best way to phrase it. Got a alternate art Canopy Baloth. Very good card. I'm a fan of the Hedron opening design. I think that is such a cool way of showcasing that this is kind of after everything's gone back to, for a lack of a better word, normal. Up to pack 4 here. Another one of those. Ooh, we got our first pathway. I love the pathways. I think these are some of the best lands that they've printed in a long time. They're very balanced, in my opinion, because you do not have to play them in decks that don't have the regular color. This card right here, though, is my favorite uncommon from the set. The Roiling Regrowth. Sack a land, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Cost 2 and a green, but the kicker is this card's instant. So decks that run kill spells, even counter spells, and at the end of turn 3 you've held one of those up, you didn't actually use it, but you feel like, oh, I can just ramp myself now free of charge, absolutely. And sometimes it's really good at mana fixing and things like that. So I'm a huge fan of that card. Once again, though, like as I said, we have some of everything, but we're still missing that black uncommon. So that might be like our chase card for this, since we've already kind of hit an Hiri. I am a little bit disappointed. I mean, obviously, you guys probably watched my spoiler video where I kind of talked a little bit about what I thought the mechanics would be and stuff like that. That video, first foil. We got a Valakut Exploration as well. Oh, there it is. There's that black uncommon. I really didn't think Landfall was going to be coming back. I also was not a fan of Kicker, and Wizards was just like, you are terrible at guessing things, because both of them are in this set. I'm a huge fan of Kicker in this set, though. I think that they've done it kind of right. They kind of melded two cards together. Like, one of my favorite cards is the card that deals 3 damage for 2 mana, or if you pay 7, you deal 5 damage, which just combines Lava, or not Lava Spike, Lightning Strike and Lava Axe into a single card. Okay, an Arch Priest of Iona. A lot of these cards are very interesting to me. I like the party mechanic enough, is the best way I can phrase it. I don't think it's going to see too much play, but I definitely think it's something to keep an eye on, especially with some of the sets that they've announced. The fact that they are talking about doing a set based around D&D, I think the party mechanic in there is going to definitely be good. We got a alternate art Cat Beast in this pack. Like I said, I can't get enough of that. The open Hedron kind of design there. All right, so we should hopefully see 5 to 6 mythics, because the mythic count per box is up, as well as the number of mythics in a box. Ooh. So we got a Throne of Makindi. This is a interesting land. I like it because you can put charge counters on it, and then later add more mana. So it's really good when you're like don't have a play, or have those like responsive plays that you don't need to play. And then later in the game, you can just kind of stack up 4 or 5 counters and then be way ahead in your mana count and just be pumping out 2 mana a turn. And even though it's one color, I think it would be slightly better if they would have made it 2 mana of any combination of colors, but it's still really good. It's still a solid card in its own rights. I still, even with the party mechanic, I think I would have really liked to see a Cavern of Souls reprint here. Okay, we got a foil pathway here. That's pretty nice. And a Shatterskull Charger. The Shatterskull Charger it's good. It's a 3 mana 4/3 trample haste. If it becomes if it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. It's got a kicker of 2. So once again, some of these kicker cards are just solid. There's not a bad way to play them. They're all really good in their own right. And then the kicker cost is literally just added bonus, which most of the time that's how kicker works anyway. But I am a ridiculously huge fan of some of the ones that kind of meld cards together. This card in particular, though, definitely is super good for red because it's already hyperly aggressive, and red tends to have the extra mana. Like, it no longer feels super bad if you have 5 mana in red, which up until this set you really did feel like, oh my goodness, I'm getting flooded if you got past 4 land in red. Got a core ally. Confounding Conundrum. Oh my goodness, this card. I think that card is so scary good, but I think it might be a little overrated. I'm not 100% sure yet. I've had a lot of people be like, oh, that card's so mainboardable because it just shuts down any ramp deck. And I see where you're coming from, but the issue is that a lot of, like, especially the Royal there, the Royal, you'd bounce a land back to their hand, but they still get the mana fix if they want to. and they still get 2 landfall triggers, and sometimes that's actually more detrimental than beneficial, so we'll see. Coveted Prize. This is a sleeper pick for me. The spell costs 1 less for each member of your party. So if you have a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard, this spell's only going to cost you 1. And you search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. If you have a full party, you may cast a spell with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. I think a tutor that lets you go and get something is always good, but a tutor that also says, hey, in a certain situation you can cast that spell is even better. And I think where that card gets super scary is with cards that you can actually go and get that are immediate changes to board state. Like, I don't think you would use it very much with board wipes, but that's the first thought I had was, oh, you go and get a board wipe and then you can board wipe immediately after. But that would mean that you lose your entire party as well, so I don't think it would be a board wipe. But I could definitely see going and getting, you know, a questing beast and just throwing it out on the battlefield. Hey, look, it's Carnage Tyrant 2.0. I really like that card. Once again, that's another one of those cards that just, it didn't need kicker. It's just an amazing card on its own. The Cragplate Baloth is a 6/6 that can't be countered. Hexproof haste. If Cragplate Baloth was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 4+1/+1 counters. Its kicker cost only adds 3, and its natural casting cost is 7. So for 7, like, I'm normally not a huge fan of creatures below curve, but 6 and 7 are kind of like the spots where, okay, it doesn't matter. 1 more mana between 6 and 7 isn't a huge deal. But for it having hexproof and haste, I will gladly take the below curve part of this card. But the irony of it is, if you get to 10 mana, you're playing it on curve as a 10/10 with hexproof and haste. Like, like I said, that's a card that I am super excited to see when it was spoiled, and even more excited to see in a pack ever. And you know, hopefully we get back to some paper magic, and I get to see one of those in draft or something, because I would squeal with delight and just ruin the entire draft right there. We are only at 1 mythic, so I mean, we got a planeswalker, so I'm not really complaining about my mythic count here. Oh well, it's like these packs just wanna answer my own questions. The Scourge of the Skyclaves. This card is terrifying. It is 1 and a black for star power, star toughness. It has a kicker cost of 5, and if you cast it with its kicker cost, each player loses half their life total rounded up. Scourge of the Skyclaves' power and toughness are each equal to 20 minus the highest life total among players. This card is so scary good to me. I think it's an instant shoo-in in some modern decks. I think that you definitely play that card in decks like Burn, if you want to add some black to Burn, which black-red Burn isn't as prevalent as black-white Burn, or red-white Burn. But you do have some decks out there, and I think that they're good, and I think that card makes it 1,000 times better. And we also got in this pack a Territorial Scythe Cat, but obviously it's foreshadowed by that Scourge of the Skyclaves. And on top of that, if you're in any kind of like grindy match where you're both just kind of hitting for as much as you possibly can, and you get in the situation where you're thinking you're winning the race, this card seals the race for you. Like, how do you beat a 10/10 for 2 mana? And especially if you have a fling in hand. Like, you get a 10/10 for 2 mana, and then you just pay 2 more mana to throw it at your opponent and just win the game outright. I love it. Alright, so we are actually starting our second row here, so this is a third of the way through the box. We got 2 mythics, and we got some pretty good rares as well. I'm happy with some of the alternate art cards, and we did get a foil Pathway. We got a Pyloth here. This card, This card's a little lackluster for me. I'm not a huge fan of it. It looks cool, and the alternate art looks even better. But I don't know. I like a lot of the quicker landfall cards. I think landfall is a very aggressive strategy. I think this card will see some play in draft and sealed, though. I definitely think if you're in those colors and you see that card, you're picking it up. When it enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each basic land you control. So it's not super bad, but where it gets a lot better is whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put 4 +1/+1 counters on each plant you control. So if it survives is the question there. And I think that this is a format in which you have enough removal that your 6-drop that is a 5/5 isn't going to survive long enough for things to go crazy. But that isn't also saying that you don't just play it on turn 7 and then immediately be like, and after it enters the battlefield, I'm going to play a land. Alright, Mythic number 3, and we got a Mythic land here. We got the Shatterskull Smashing, and the Shatterskull, the Hammer Pass. I am a huge fan of this one. This is one of my favorite Mythic lands out of this set, because it's one of the few ones that doesn't cost ridiculously high. It costs X and 2 red. It deals X damage divided as you choose among up to 2 targets and or planeswalker or 2 creatures and or planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, Shatterskull Smashing deals twice X damage divided as you choose among them instead. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of that card. I think that card is just an extra mountain in most burn decks that actually has the ability to remove a blocker or a problematic planeswalker right off the rip. This is another card that I love. This pack's just chock full of great red. This card has a kicker of 1 red. It normally costs 1 and a red to deal 1 damage to each creature. If it was kicked, it deals 2 damage to each creature instead. And it's instant speed. So you just wipe your opponent's board of every 1/1 creature or 0/1 creature. Like, obviously, this just trounces that. And, you know, that's what I mean. Like, there's some really good red cards in this format. I think that red definitely got a huge, huge power boost. And obviously, at this moment, you're not seeing Embercleave go anywhere. So I think red-green landfall is definitely going to be a major deck in Constructed. But red removal is just so good. I love all of it. We got a foil coveted prize. And we got the Barazol, the Split Curtain? Yeah, sorry. I don't know why there's so many green-blue cards that sound like Verols, but they all sound like Verols. This card enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each mana spent to cast it. This is actually worded really interesting to me, because most of the time it's what X is paid for. So it's X, a green, and a blue. So even if you just pay the green and the blue, you're playing a 2/2 on turn 2. And then whenever you cast a kick spell, you may remove 2 +1/+1 counters from Verazol. If you do, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for that copy. So basically, if you play it on turn 2 and then you play a kick spell on turn 3, you can copy it and kill your creature. Or if you get it late game, you can just charge it up to be a really good creature. I don't know how many kicker decks there's going to be floating around there, but that's definitely something I think you'd be looking at if you're building around kicker. I don't think that you're going to be seeing too many decks that don't run that card. We have alternate art Dreadworm as well. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, Dreadworm gains indestructible until end of turn for a 5/4 for 5 black mana. Well, 4 and a black mana. So we are about 4 packs away from that box topper, and I know, just like me, everybody's probably salivating. Maddening Cacophony, the card that makes the mill deck playable. Each opponent mills 8 cards. If this spell was kicked, instead each opponent mills half their library, rounded up. So for 2 mana, you mill 8, or for 7 mana, or wait, 6 mana, you mill half your deck. Like, I really don't like the card. I'm not a fan of the mill mechanic. But it is a valid form of play. And especially in this set, you actually have a lot of cards that mill. There's a lot of green, or not green, but blue, black cards that are focused around the mill mechanic. So you have enough there to actually do something with it. So if that's something you like to do, you definitely have the ability to do it. We got some classic cards in this pack. We got a Negate, Broken Wings, the kind of token, let's destroy flying, green card. So far, though, this has been a good box. Oh, Mythic number 4, an Ancient Green Warden, another good card. You may play lands from your graveyard, and it has reach. If a land enters the battlefield, causes a trigger to ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So basically, that triggers your landfalls twice. That triggers a whole bunch of other things as well. Like, I'm trying to think what all there is that it really benefits besides landfall off the top of my head, but I can't really think too much about it. I like the card. I think that it's very smart that, ironically enough, this is the first time we've gone to Zendikar without them reprinting Evolving Wilds, but I don't think they wanted that to be that powerful in Limited, because I could only imagine how busted that thing would appear in Limited if you were able to just basically constantly loop the same Evolving Wilds. I also think that it's pretty fair because you don't have that going on. Kargan Intimidator. The second or third card ever in Magic to have cowards can't block warriors. For 1 mana, you can choose one that hasn't been chosen before this turn. Kargan Intimidator gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Target creature becomes a coward until end of turn, or target warrior gains trample until end of turn. And he's a 3/1 for 2. So I think this card is really, really creative. I think it's very interesting that they chose to print. It reminds me a lot of Teferi from Core Set, because they chose to print something on one specific card that feels like it should be something that they built around. But I'm not at all, in any way, shape, or form, disappointed with that. I think that that's a creative move. I was a little salty with Teferi, just because once they talked about phasing on that card, I really wanted to see a Teferi's Protection, because there's a lot of board wipes out there that actually don't kill creatures. So being able to phase out your entire battlefield would have been really good. And we got another pathway. This box is looking good, folks. We are up to 4 mythics. We have at least 3 pathways, one of which is foil. Those are the kind of cards I'm looking for. It is also worth noting, though, that I actually haven't looked up any prices yet for the set, so I could be way off here. After we open up the other 2 boxes, because I am doing a set box opening, and I am also going to do a collector box opening, I will do a final video that's going to actually tally up the value of each of these boxes and kind of see which one's worth the best value. Obviously, the weighted one is going to be the collector pack. We're now at Expo moment. We are now going to see what our Expedition pack is, and these packs scare the living daylights out of me because it's 1 card in this nice little heavily protected plastic wrapper, and I'm always nervous that I'm going to... Okay. We got a Misty Rainforest, and I actually love this art. I like the way that they did this. The fetch lands in this are not only very beautiful, but they are reprints that they did not want to have too many of out there. They couldn't put it in the constructed format, but they could put them in these And this is a throwback to my old Zendikar days, which I remember when they first announced the original Expedition lands and how excited I was for them. So obviously that's just a great card to pull any given time. But it is so nice that, you know, people are going to buy this set because they want to play Standard, and it's going to open up doors for them to play other formats as well. I'm honestly going to be truthful here. I'm a little bit surprised it wasn't a Windswept Heath. We've actually pulled a ridiculous amount of Windswept Heaths. So we have a river Riptide foil, and Tabarak's Hope's Demise. This card I'm in love with. 2 and a black for a 2/2 flyer, and it has lifelink as long as it has 5 or more +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Tabarak's. If that creature was a cleric, you may draw a card. If you do, you lose 1 life. So basically, what I'm really liking about a lot of these cards is there's several cards that they just slapped incidental kind of classes onto, which Party I feel like they should have saved for the D&D base set that's coming out next summer. But I'm not at all disappointed that they put Party in this, because you have a whole year to actually get to the point where we could just reprint the Party mechanic. The Aura Skyclave Hierophant, which this is one of the more wah-wah, like, really sad pulls from a box, because if you're buying a box, this is also your buy a box promo. So you get an alternate art version of this that looks, I'm sorry to say, I normally don't knock art very often, but it does look better than this one. It is still a 3/3 for 4 with lifelink. Whenever he or another cleric you control dies, return target cleric card with lower converted mana cost from your graveyard to the battlefield. So these things go hand in hand, and that would have been really stellar in a sealed pull. But when you're opening just a box, you're kind of like, oh man, like I already have one of these. I would much rather see it be something I don't already have, I guess, would be the best way to phrase it. Because I'm never a fan of getting, like, copious amounts of copies of cards that I can get other ways than just from a box. Unless they're, like, value cards, like, you know, Expo lands. And... ooh, okay. This card is the funnest card I've ever seen. 2 and a blue... spells your opponent's control that target Cherix the Raging Isle. Cost 2 more to cast. And it's a 0/17. But for 3 colorless mana, Cherix gets +X -X until end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. What I love about this card is it fits perfectly into a mono blue deck, where you're just going, here's my Cherix, turn 4. Turn 6, I'm going to activate its ability twice, because there's nothing saying you can't activate it more than once. And once you activate it twice, it's now a 12/5. And the kicker there is, you can activate it once and swing, and your opponent either has to chump block it, or try to gang block it so you don't pump it even more. But if they just chump block it, you just start eating away their entire field, which blue doesn't normally do anyway. So I just feel like it's a very, very good card in most aspects of the game. And I think it's very creative, and it gives you a lot of different lines of play with it. This is another one of my favorite uncommons. I'm a huge fan of +1/+1 counters. Anybody in my play group will tell you that. I'm certain in a couple weeks I'll be throwing together a green-white counter deck for this new standard. And I'm hopefully going to be able to get the time to do a video on it. But this card gives you a +1/+1 counter at instant speed for 1 green, or is a land. And I like a lot of these land flip cards. One of the more interesting things that I've heard recently is that the fact that Wizards did announce that Kaldheim will have the rest of the pathways. So I'm a little bit excited to see if they just do more types of flip cards in Kaldheim. or if we'll just have 4 random pathways that are there. I love the artwork on this goblin. He is holding a flaming dragon skull. It's 2 and a red for Relic Robber. He has a 2/2 with haste, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player creates a 0/1 colorless golem construct, or goblin construct artifact creature token with this creature can't block. And at the beginning of your upkeep, this creature deals 1 damage to you. So these creatures can't just be chump blocked away, and you're just slowly getting to the point that your opponent is just dying from ping damage, which is super fun. I think that it pairs really well with other cards in Standard right now. So I think that card's going to see a lot of fun things going on with it, and we will be seeing it around in Standard, I'm assuming, the entire time. This is one of my wife's favorite cards. It's not foil, but she really likes the McKindy Ox. It is a good card, for sure. It's a little bit heavier than a lot of landfall cards I want to play, but for 5 mana, it's a 4/4 that has a landfall trigger. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, you tap something your opponent controls. That's pretty good late game. Oh, you have 1 good creature you left back to block. Having a lot of trouble with this last pack in this row. And then we got 1 more row after this. Alright. Oh, the Skyclave Shade, which is going to be a tongue twister anytime anybody says it. The new version of Scrap Heap Scrounger. It is 3/1 for 2 mana. It can block. It has a kicker cost of 3 as well. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if Skyclave Shade is in your graveyard and it's your turn, you may cast it from your graveyard this turn. I think this card is very, very good. Once again, though, it has that 1 back end. I don't know how good 1 back ends are going to be. We also got a foil Farsight Adept in this pack. Yeah, I think that card definitely has a lot of potential to see a lot of play. We got a very pretty Brushfire Elemental in this pack as well. This border is just off the charts good. A 1/1 with haste that can be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and landfall gives it +2/+2 until end of turn. I'm really liking that. I think that's a much better version of landfall than we've seen in the past. Most of the past landfall creatures that got buffed only got a +1/+1. Most of the ones this time around get a +2/+2, which I feel like that extra point of power makes them playable, but doesn't make them utterly broken. Now, granted, though, if you throw that pickaxe that I was talking about earlier into the mix, then sometimes it can get a little broken, because 1 land giving your creature +4/+4 is pretty dang good. Now, interestingly enough, I don't think we've hit a rare equipment yet. We got the Yasharn Implicable Earth, 2 green-white. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic forest and a basic plains card. Reveal those cards, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. Players can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. I'm intrigued by this card. I don't know how much I'd use it or how much we'll see it used, but it definitely does stop some things. It makes it very hard for your opponent to actually play their Fabled Passages and Village Rites and things like that require sacrificing. So I don't know. I don't know if that card's gonna be a good card or not. Alright, Thieving Skydiver and a foil Namana Sky Dancer. So we got a lot of sky in this pack. Alright, so 1 and a blue for a 2/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target artifact with converted mana cost X or less. If that artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydancer. And its kicker cost is X. But X can't be 0 with this particular card. And that's important because otherwise you just, take their 0-drop artifact, which not so much for standard or a lot of constructed formats, but in Commander you can definitely steal some very powerful 0-drop artifacts. Or, Legacy, just take some of the best cards in Legacy are 0-drop artifacts, so I think that is definitely fair that X can't be 0 on that card. Alright, the Myriad Construct. This card's interesting to me. It's a 4/4 for 4. Has a kicker cost of 3. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each non-basic land your opponents control. When it becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it and create a number of 1/1 colors construct artifacts equal to its power. So, I like the card enough. Oh, and interestingly enough, we got a construct token with it. That's pretty cool. I like the card enough, but I just don't know. I don't know if that's playable, if it's not. It doesn't fit very well with a lot of things. And that's me even talking about how much I love +1/+1 counters. So I think it's very hard for me to pull for that card. But I could be very wrong. I mean, especially if your opponent's playing a deck with they have like 6 non-basic lands and you're just able to slap that thing as a 10/10 on turn 7. Ooh, okay. So we got a Territorial Foil Skycat in the alternate art. I once again, this is a card that I love. I like the +1/+1 counters on that card. Permanently getting buffed from your landfall triggers. And our first rare equipment, I knew it was coming sooner or later, and probably my favorite one, Maul of the Skyclaves, 2 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. I'm a huge fan of the fact that these equipments enter the battlefield as equipped. I think that's a really smart way to do it. I think it's very, flavor-wise and lore-wise, we get to see these cards using their abilities immediately, and I think that makes them way more playable. And a friend of mine actually made a comment. I think I don't know where he heard it, but he made the comment that it's like they are enchantments with flashback. So, because their equipment costs always cost a little bit more. The actual buff of these equipments, though, is the fact that they are cheap to play and they immediately are equipped. We got a Hydra token and Soul Shatter. I have seen that card so much. Soul Shatter is one of the most common cards, and this is something interesting. This is the only non-rare, just straight up land in the set. So I actually don't have a spot for it because we almost went through this whole box without pulling one. The base camp is definitely built for the party mechanic, and I'm a fan of it to a point. I don't think it's good enough that you would actually ever use it outside of just having it in a sealed bowl. I don't even think you'd take it in draft unless you were heavily, heavily in the party mechanic. An inscription of insight. These inscriptions are super cool. I'm hoping that soon we get to finish the color combos of them, because we only got 3 inscriptions. We got a green one, we got a blue one, and a black one. We didn't get a red one or a white one. The inscriptions always kind of follow the same formula. They remind me of like charms or commands in that aspect. They have a kicker cost, and for 2 mana you get to do one of their 3 abilities, but for their full cost you get to do all of their abilities. Oh, nice. Alternate art, or borderless as I think they're called. Clearwater Pathway and Murkwater Pathway. So this box has been pretty fair. Not anything super stellar. We do have, I think, like 5 packs left here. So hopefully we're pulling for like a foil alternate art Nissa. That's kind of my personal wish, but you know, we can all dream, right? But you know, right now we're sitting at 4 mythics, so we're due for another mythic, at least one mythic. So maybe. Well, it's not this thing. I love the fact that there's a goblin on that card because it reminds me of good old-fashioned Goblin Guide. 1 red for a 2/2 trample haster. When Wayward Guide Beast deals combat damage to a player, return a land you control to its owner's hand. So it's different than Goblin Guide because you're not ramping your opponent by letting them just top deck all the lands and getting to play them out of their hand. But it does remind me enough of Goblin Guide that I immediately made the comparison in my head. I think that card's super good. I think, especially in a landfall deck, you're not playing it turn 1, but later in the game, you're definitely going to be slapping that down and trying to get some of your lands back for additional triggers. We got a Linvala. I'm not a fan of Linvala. I think that she's okay. You have to sacrifice her to give your stuff hexproof and indestructible. Hexproof or indestructible on 10 to turn is the thing that I don't really like about her. I think if that was just a mana cost as opposed to just sacking her, I think I would have been much more happy with the card. But she isn't bad. 3 packs. Do we see Mythic number 5? Oh, there's a second inscription here. Not a Mythic. And we are kind of but I can't complain about this box because obviously we got a Misty Rainforest. And I think that that's also something that's worth noting is that we don't get the ability to complain about boxes in this set. We just have to kind of be like, well, the box itself wasn't good, but I got this expedition. I think the only time you're really going to be super upset, and I apologize to any Commander players who might argue with me about it. Oh, okay. Okay. Leyline Tyrant. Kind of lost my train of thought there for a second, but what I was going to say was if you get like one of the new Commander lands, I think you'd be a little salty about it. But, you know, maybe you're a Commander player and maybe that's what you're hunting for to begin with. I just think value-wise, they're just not there. But yeah, that Tyrant, oh my goodness. You don't lose unspent red mana at steps and phases end. When it dies, you may pay any amount of red mana. When you do, it deals that much damage to target opponent. So, short of it being exiled from the battlefield, you are definitely hitting your opponent for some amount of mana. In the last pack, ooh, my favorite kill spell. For 4 mana, you get to destroy a creature. If this spell costs 1 less if your opponent controls no basic lands, but it's also a land. I think people greatly devalue this card because most people want to put it in place of another kill spell, but what they're missing is it's actually just an additional kill spell you can run in place of a basic land that you don't really need all the time. This is the entire box, though. I'm going to go finish sorting out these commons here. Hope you guys had a great time. I'll be back in a week or 2 with the other boxes, and then we'll do a follow-up video to see which one's worth the best value out of the boxes I opened. Thanks for watching. I hope you had as much fun as we did making the video. Me and Obi will be up to more antics next week. Feel free to hit the like and subscribe button to see more of what we're up to, and we will be back soon with new videos.